Right now, you are doing something no other animal on the planet can do. You are bored. Maybe it's mild, a low hum underneath whatever you're supposed to be doing.
Maybe it's the reason you picked up your phone 3 times in the last hour without knowing why. Maybe it's been sitting inside you for weeks and you've been calling it something else. Restlessness, dissatisfaction, the feeling that something is missing but you can't name what. Every human being alive knows exactly what this feeling is. No other animal does. And that fact, that one quiet fact, might tell us more about what went wrong with modern life than almost anything else science has found. Let's start with what boredom actually is, because most people have it completely backwards. The common assumption is that boredom is the absence of stimulation. Nothing is happening, so you feel bored. But neuroscientists studying boredom in the last 2 decades have found something that breaks that model entirely.
Boredom is not passive. It is not emptiness. It is an active signal, a specific, measurable neurological state that your brain enters when it is ready to act and has nothing meaningful to act on. In 2014, researchers at the University of Waterloo identified boredom as a distinct emotional state, not a mood, not a byproduct of tiredness, but a signal, like hunger, like thirst, like pain.
Your brain produces it deliberately, on purpose, because it wants you to do something. The specific something it wants you to do is find meaning. Not entertainment, not stimulation, meaning. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in this video. Because here is what your brain is actually doing when you are bored.
The default mode network, a set of interconnected brain regions that activate when you are not focused on an external task, lights up. This is the same network active during imagination, self-reflection, planning for the future, and building a model of who you are. Boredom is your brain switching into this mode and waiting. It is your nervous system clearing the decks and saying, something important needs to happen here. I am ready. What are we doing? The problem is the answer you give it.
For most of human history, that signal had an obvious target. You were hungry. You needed shelter. Someone in your group was sick. A threat was approaching. The gap between where you were and where you needed to be was always visible, always real, always requiring you specifically to close it. Boredom pointed at something, and the something it pointed at mattered. That system is 300,000 years old. It was built inside a world where meaning was not a philosophical question. It was a practical one. The tribe needed the hunt to succeed. The children needed food. The fire needed to stay lit. Every individual inside that world had a role that only they could fill. And boredom was the signal that reminded them to fill it. Now, think about what that signal encounters in the modern world. You are not hungry. The food is already in the kitchen. You are not threatened. The building is locked and climate controlled. Your children are not in immediate danger. Nobody in your group needs you to do something right now that only you can do. The signal fires anyway. It fires every day, multiple times a day, with the same urgency it carried on the African savanna. And it finds nothing to attach to.
So you pick up your phone, and for about 4 minutes, the signal quiets. Your brain gets something that resembles stimulation, new information, small social rewards, the low-grade sense that something is happening. But the signal is not gone. It has been suppressed, not answered.
And when you put the phone down, it comes back, slightly louder than before. This is not a coincidence. It is not a personal failure. It is a 300,000-year-old system meeting a world it was never designed to navigate. But here is the part that most people never hear. Boredom, in its original form, was not just a warning signal. It was a creative engine. Psychologist Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire ran a series of experiments beginning in 2009 that produced results almost nobody expected.
In one study, participants who were assigned the most tedious task she could design, copying numbers from a phone book by hand for an extended period, consistently outperformed a control group on creative tasks administered immediately afterward. Not slightly, significantly. The bored participants generated more ideas, more unusual ideas, and more creative solutions than the group that had been kept engaged the entire time. Mann's explanation was precise. Boredom forces the mind into a state of undirected internal search. When there is no external problem to solve, the brain does not go quiet. It goes inward. It begins connecting things that have never been connected before. It surfaces old memories and runs them against new information. It builds and rebuilds models of the self, of other people, of the future. This is where creativity lives, not in stimulation, in the absence of it. And your ancestors knew this, not as a theory, but as lived experience. The long hours of a watch kept at night, the slow days between hunts when the weather closed in and there was nothing to do but sit and think. These hours weren't wasted hours. They were the hours in which human culture was built. Stories were invented. Tools were redesigned. Social bonds were examined and strengthened. Plans were made that required imagining things that did not yet exist. The philosopher Bertrand Russell wrote in 1930 that the capacity to endure boredom is essential to a happy life. He was not making a moral argument. He was making a biological one, a century before the neuroscience caught up to him. Now, here is where it gets stranger. Boredom is not universal across the animal kingdom. It is extremely rare. And the few animals that do appear to experience something like it share one very specific trait with humans. They are cognitively complex enough that their brains require challenge to develop and maintain properly. Dolphins in captivity display boredom-like behaviors. So do elephants, certain primates, ravens, and crows. In every case, these animals were not built to simply exist in a stable environment. They were built to solve problems, navigate social complexity, build mental maps of the world, and keep those maps updated in real time.
Boredom, in this view, is not a flaw. It is a feature of intelligence. It is the tax you pay for having a brain complex enough to model the future, imagine alternatives, and care about meaning. Simpler animals do not get bored because they do not have the neural architecture to miss something that isn't there.
A cow standing in a field is not bored. It is simply present. A human standing in the same field is running 10 parallel simulations of everything else they could be doing, should be doing, or wish they were doing. That gap between what is and what could be is the engine of human civilization. It is also the source of almost all human suffering. Every religion in human history has had something to say about this gap. The Buddhist concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but more precisely meaning unsatisfactoriness, is essentially a description of what boredom points at. The Stoics built an entire philosophy around learning to close it from the inside rather than the outside.
Pascal, in the 17th century, wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He meant it literally. He was describing the boredom signal misfiring in a world that had already begun offering too many escapes from it. And now, we live in a world that has industrialized the escape. The average adult in 2024 spends over 6 hours a day consuming digital media. That number does not include time spent working on screens. It is purely recreational,
purely reactive, purely devoted to answering the boredom signal with something that is not meaning. And the data on what this is doing to human cognition is not subtle. Attention spans are measurably shorter. The ability to sit with discomfort, including the discomfort of boredom, is declining across every measured age group. Rates of anxiety and depression, both of which share deep neurological overlap with chronic unresolved boredom, have risen in almost every developed country for 30 consecutive years. We are not failing to entertain ourselves. We are doing that better than any civilization in history. We are failing to be bored. We are failing to sit with the signal long enough to hear what it is actually asking for.
We are answering hunger with something that tastes like food, but contains no nutrition. And we are doing it so constantly and so efficiently that the deeper message, the one about meaning, about purpose, about the role only you can fill, never gets through. Your ancestors did not have this problem, not because their lives were harder, though they were, but because the world they lived in was structured around them in a way that answered the signal directly. You mattered to the group. The group needed you specifically. The work was real, and the stakes were real. And when it was done, you knew it was done because you could see the result with your own eyes. That structure is gone, and boredom is the alarm still going off in the empty building. The question is not how to silence it. The question is what you build to make it mean something again. Because the signal is not broken. It never was. It is the oldest, most honest part of your nervous system. It has been trying to tell you the same thing for 300,000 years. Not that you need entertainment, that you need a reason.